Hi everyone, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. This week's tutorial is going to be on this really pretty in puffs toddler cardigan. And I called it the pretty in puffs because it's got this great little puffed sleeve detail. Now it is a toddler size 5T, but you can adjust this for any size that you need. And I do talk briefly about that at the top of the tutorial. In fact, I made mine a little bit more wider in the side just to give more relaxed room. The toddler I'm making it for is actually 4 years old, but she's quite tall, so I made it a size up. You can certainly make it longer simply by adding more rows in the length. And of course you can adjust and make your sleeves a bit longer if you need. You can also actually just make it a short sleeve little cardigan and just stop shortly after the puffs if you like. This cardigan was used in making the extended single crochet stitch, which was really lovely. It's just to take a little variation on one of your very basic stitches known as the single crochet, but just a little something different to add a different kind of texture to your project. And I just finished it off with a little button there, and we've got our cute little collar, and we are good to go. So it is a bit of a lengthy tutorial, so it is split into 2 parts. And so you're going to get part 1 today, and in a couple of days, by the weekend, I am going to upload part 2, and that way you have both parts one after the other. And this would make for a perfect little Easter sweater or coat or anything that you'd like to make. So let's now just get all of our materials together and let's get started on our Pretty in Puffs cardigan. And here are the materials we're going to use for this project. The yarn that I'm using is Bernat Premium, and it's got this really pretty sparkle that runs through it. I just love it. And in case you're wondering, the color is called Pink Lemonade Sparkle. Perfect name for it. It is considered a medium weight 4 yarn, and they recommend a 5mm hook. And that is exactly what I'm going to be using for this project today. It's also known as a size 8 or an H. As always, make sure that you have a handy pair of scissors and a trusty darning needle to sew in your ends. And for this project, you're definitely going to want to have a piece of paper and a pen and a measuring tape, okay? You will also need several buttons of your choice if you choose to put buttons on your cardigan. I would suggest anywhere between 3 big ones or 5 medium-sized ones like these ones. I just picked these up at Walmart. So let's get started here. So first and foremost, you're going to want to take some measurements. So the first thing you want to do, now the size I'm making this for is for a toddler, and she is 4.5, so I'm going to make it a size 5T, okay? Now I'm going to just briefly go over how we're going to come up with our initial chain for this particular project. You can size it for any size, even up to adult, and in fact, I will be having a video come out soon on how to figure out the sizing for your garments. Anyway, that is a video that will be coming out shortly. For now, we're making this for a toddler. And so what I wanted to find out is the measurement of the width of her neck. So I'm making this for my little goddaughter, so behind the neck. So let me just grab this here. So when we have a body, and I'm not an artist by any means, so you have your neck that goes like that. We want this measurement here, okay? Not the circumference, not all the way around. Let me just bring that up. So you don't want the measurement all the way around. You just want the width, okay? Now for a toddler, the average is 3¼ inches, okay? Which she is. And that would mean, sorry, that is 3 3/4, okay? And that would mean it would be approximately 9 centimeters, okay? Now, you'll see that I've got this kind of rectangular shape. This is my neck opening. This is where we're starting with this cardigan. So we're working from the top down. So for me, I know my measurement across here is 9 centimeters or 3 inches and 3/4. So what I need to do is figure out how many chains I need to make in order to get to that measurement. Now I've already done that. So for me, I know I'm going to chain 15. So 15 chains from one end to the other. Then I need my measurement to come around the sides here. And for me, that is going to be 5 chains on each side. Again, I'm going to have a separate video explaining how I got these chains. And then here I am going to do 6 chains and 6 chains. And this is the opening of the cardigan, okay? And then at each corner, we need to add an extra chain because this is where we're going to create our increases, okay? And this is the traditional raglan style, is to do what we call double increases on each corner here. And that's what will help your garment to droop, okay? So once I add all of these up, in total for my garment, I need 41 stitches. And because I'm using the extended single crochet stitch, I'm going to add 1 more for turning. Okay, so we're going to start off with a chain of 41 stitches for our neck hole opening. What's important to know right now, the reason why I even showed you this is because it's really important to understand where we are going to do our increases as we chain up our initial neck hole, okay? So let's get started and you'll see what I mean as we go along. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And you want to start off by chaining 41. As always, be careful, and I know I say this a lot, not to chain too tightly because this really will affect how your project will look. So as usual, if you are a really tight crocheter, I always recommend going up half or a full hook size when you're doing your initial chains, okay? So 41 chains to begin. Okay, once you have your 41 chains done, you'll have something that looks like that, okay, nice and even. So now we're going to begin our first row, okay? So what we want to do after you have your 41 chains, we want to chain 1 more, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the second chain from the hook, so 1 and 2, this one never counts, and we're going to place an extended single crochet into that stitch. So you're going to insert your hook, you're going to pull up a loop just like you would do for a regular single crochet. There's 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, but you're only going to pull through the first stitch. Okay, so it creates a little chain there. You still have 2 loops on your hook. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through both of them. And that is an extended single crochet. It's just slightly taller by millimeters, slightly taller than a regular single crochet. Okay, and that is what we're going to proceed to do all the way to the end of our chain here. Okay, so again, into the next stitch, you're going to insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 stitch only, then yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, okay, let's do that again. We're going to go into the next stitch, insert your hook, pull up, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, so we've got 3 of those on the go there. Okay, so right now we're not going to worry about that little chain one at the beginning. Okay, so we've got 3 stitches here. Now, let's go back to our little diagram here. So basically we are starting here and we're working our way around. If you're left-handed, you would start here and work your way around here. So remember, this is the front panel, the first front panel. We have 6 stitches here. So we want to do 3. So we've already done 3. So we want to chain up 3 more. Sorry, not chain. We want to stitch up 3 more times. Okay, so I've done 6 stitches so far. And one thing I realized I forgot to mention in my initial stitch count, because those of you that are counting that up might think, wow, 41, that does not equal to 41. But actually each corner also gets a stitch assigned to it. So that would include another 4 stitches. So this is how I got my 41 stitches. So we've done 6 extended single crochets, and now we're going into the 7th stitch here. And this is where we're going to place our increase. Okay, so all of our corners are going to get an increase. But what's special here is we're going to do a double increase. That's what they call a double increase. If you were doing a granny square, for example, you would just simply call that creating a corner. So just kind of interesting how the different terms are used. Okay, so now we're going into that 7th stitch. So we're going to place our first double increase or first corner. So you will place an extended single crochet once. Then you go back again into that same stitch and you place another one. So that's the first increase. We've placed 2 stitches in one. Now we're going to chain 1 and go back into that same stitch and do that again. So we're going to place 2 more extended single crochets in there. So there's 1 and there's 2. And don't worry that the stitch is stretching out a little bit. That will all even out. You can really see it's creating a sharp bend there. Okay, so remember our diagram. That's where that is bending there. Okay, so, whoops. So this is where we are, and so it's creating that bend. Now we're going to go up the side. That's where our shoulders are here. So we know that we need 5 stitches across to get to our next increase. So we are now going to proceed to do 5 extended single crochets across. So we go right away into the next stitch. Okay, so I've done my 5 stitches up. Now I'm coming up to another increase. So if you're working this way, you are here. In fact, it turns out I am working this way, so I am here. Sorry, I always get kind of flipped back and forth when I'm using the camera here, but it works out the same. So now we're going to do another double increase here. So we started here, I did 6 stitches, a double increase here, also known as a corner. I've gone 5 stitches up, and now we're going to do another double increase here. Okay, so that means we're going to go into the very next stitch and place 2 extended single crochets, 1 and 2. We're going to chain 1 and now go back into that same stitch and do another increase. So there's 1 and 2. Okay, so there you go. Now you've got these definite corners. And don't worry that you might think, oh, that's really a square. It will all smooth out as the top gets created in future rows. Okay, so now we've just finished this corner, and now we know I'm going to do 15 stitches to get to the other side. Okay, so I would just proceed to go into the very next stitch as usual and just do 15 extended single crochets as usual, 1 into each stitch. Now this is where I'm going to leave you because the rest is pretty straightforward for this first row. And what I recommend is that you pause the video, even if you want to take a screenshot or pause here with this number, because this is what you need to focus on. So we've just finished this corner. I'm now going to work across 15 stitches. You'll create your next corner into the 16th stitch. So remember, each of these corners has their own stitch. Then you will proceed to do 5 stitches. Then into the next stitch, you'll do your double increase, which should bring you back to your last 6 stitches. And then I'll meet you back up here and we'll talk about row 2. Okay, so I have finished row 1. And so my work looks something like that. So it looks like a big old rectangle with an opening in the front. And so at the end of row 1, I should have 57 stitches. So if I did all my increases correctly, that is the number I should have. Now we're going to go on to row 2, which should now be much easier for row 2 in the next several rows, because now we know where we're going to place our increases. Now, for those of you that might have a trickier time finding that exact chain 1 spot, you might want to put some stitch markers. Okay, so it's totally up to you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. Okay. And now right away into that very first stitch, we are going to place an extended single crochet. Okay, so in case you're unsure, the stitches are right there. And so I'm just going to insert my hook right away. As usual, and I'm just going to stitch up one extended single crochet. So the chain 1 won't really count. Okay. And now I'm going to go into the next 8 stitches until I get to that chain 1 space. Now again, this is quite nestled in here. There's my chain 1 space. If you have a hard time, or if you find that you're having a hard time, definitely use stitch markers. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Most of the time I'm just too lazy to, but I'm also really good at keeping my count. Okay, so just go ahead, 1 into each, and I'll meet up with you when we get to the corner. Okay, so I have done 9 stitches across now, and I am at my very first chain 1 space. Okay, so I'm going to do that double increase just like I did before, also known as a corner. So I'm just going to call it a corner from here on out. So our next insert into that space, you're going to place 1 extended single crochet, back into that space, you're going to place a second extended single crochet, and chain 1 and back into that space again. So now the spaces are, or should be, a lot easier to identify. So for the next several rows, this should be pretty straightforward. So there we go. We're extending our corner there. And now we're going to just work into the regular stitches all the way across to our next chain space. So you will have done 9 stitches in total from your last corner. Okay. Okay, and we're up to our next corner space here. So you know what we're going to do. We're going to create a corner. We're going to place 2 stitches, chain 1, and 2 more stitches. So there's my chain 1. I'm going to go back in there. Remember, you're working your extended single crochet stitch. Okay, so there's your second corner. So you can see that your work is really taking shape now. And now you're going to proceed to do the exact same thing, just like we did before. 1 stitch into each all the way across until you hit the next corner. You create your corner in this chain space, come down here, create your corner, and come across. Okay, so then you have row 2 finished. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a little chart up on the screen here, because I'm going to set you off now for the next 7 rows. Okay, and what it's going to show you is just the number of stitches you should have on each side at the end of every row. And this is just a little guide for you to kind of check in as you go along, just so that you can kind of make sure that you're on the right track. So you can see here that along the back, it's got the number of stitches for every, so we start in the center, and each number as you go to the rings moving outward will give you the number of stitches across the back, for example. Then down on the shoulder, the number of stitches starting from the center, moving your way out to the final row is that number of stitches. And of course, the list below will give you the number of stitches you should have at the end of each round. And again, I find it handy if you just take a little screenshot of that, or press pause, and then you can just refer to it in the meantime. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I will meet you guys at the end of your 7th row. Okay, I have completed row 7 or round 7, I guess. Now, I just wanted to address something because this may be happening to you. So you may have something that looks kind of like a W shape. Now, because of the nature of the stitch and the fact that I am using more of a tight rectangular raglan yoke here, the increases are really bunching here. Now, remember here we did increases of 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double, I'm sorry, it's not double crochets, extended single crochets. We did 2 stitches, chain 1, and 2 stitches. For a rectangular yoke like this, it may be too many stitches. So this doesn't bother me because in a moment I'm going to show you how we're going to kind of fold it down and continue working. If you find that this is really kind of bothersome to you, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, and I'll put a note further back in the video, which you'll probably see. If this effect is bothering you, like visually you just don't like it, for your increases, just do 1 stitch, chain 1, and 1. 1 stitch, chain 1, and 1 every time you come to your corners. This should allow it to kind of sit a little bit more relaxed. The reason why it's kind of coming in like this is because there's a lot of stitches bunching in here. And again, I will address this in the actual raglan cardigan lesson tutorial that I have coming up with regards to being able to do different shapes for your yoke. So you can do, like in this case, I did a rectangle. Some people like doing a perfect square. And then of course, there's some people that do a circle. So for now, this is what my work looks like. In total, at the end of row 7 or round 7, I have 137 stitches in total. So if you're looking at this going, how the heck is that going to be a cardigan? What we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to fold it over. So now we are starting to see, we have our little opening here. And if there is a gap here, that is good because we're going to do a trim here at the end. So I purposely did this stitch count so there would be a gap here. Okay, so it's not meant to perfectly come together. So what you want to do is you want to have your corners come perfectly together like that. And it should match up in the front here. So that is your neck opening. And this is the front of your cardigan. Now I stopped at round 7 because once I got to round 7, it created the chest width that I needed. So this is the other measurement you're going to need for this project. You want to know what the circumference is of the chest. Now, for those of you that follow along on my newsletter, you know, a couple months back, I gave a free downloadable PDF on all of the, how to measure all of the children's sizes up to toddler. So you can still find that on our website, crochetcrafty.com. I'll put a link for it in the description box down below. And it's a chart that shows you what the average measurement is for different ages. So for mine, which is I'm making for a 5T, it is on average 25 inches in circumference. Okay, so that's 25 inches or 62.5 centimeters. What you want to do is you want to take that number and divide it in half. So 25 inches divided in half is 12.5. If you're doing centimeters, it works out to about 31 1/4 or 31.25 centimeters. So once I did 7 rows, I just folded it down and then I take my measuring tape and I measure across here and there we have it, 12.5, perfecto. So I know that I need to stop with my increases now, okay? If you don't have the measurement you need, I would do another round. Generally 6 rounds or 7, like 7 is really max. Usually 6 or 7 is the average, okay? So now we're going to talk about how we're going to create our actual armholes and continue the rest of the body of our cardigan. So what you'll do, and you notice I did end up marking my corners here just because I wanted to keep it nice and clear. So what we'll do is we'll just begin as usual. You'll chain 1 and begin right away into that very first stitch. And we're doing that extended single crochet. And you're just going to continue as usual. And you're just going to place 1 stitch into each stitch all the way across until you get to your very first chain 1 space. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And just when you're about ready to get in that first chain 1 space, I'll meet up with you here. Okay, so I've made my way across and I have 20 stitches along this side. Now remember that this should be kind of folded this way. So you want to kind of just refold it to kind of find out where you are, because this is where we're going to attach the front to our back. Okay, so I've just folded that over again. So here is that first chain 1. I'm just going to take that marker out because I actually don't need it anymore. I am going to work into that chain 1 area. So I'm going to insert and create 1 more stitch there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 3. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3, not too tightly. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over all of these stitches and go right away into my next chain 1 space, which is where that stitch marker is. Let me just get this organized here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work directly into that stitch, and I'm just going to take that out. So I'm going to work directly into that stitch. Oops, that's a space, the chain 1 space. And I'm going to work an extended single crochet. So what that does is it attaches the front side, so this is the front side, to the back side. Okay, and then from here on out, I will just continue to place 1 stitch into every single stitch until we get to our next chain 1 space again. I'm just going to do a couple here, a couple more, just so you can see the effect. Okay, so there we have it. So now, if I look at it this way, now we've got our armhole. Okay, so that's the front, this is the back. And so now we're going to work across the back. And when you come to your next chain 1 space, we're going to do the same thing, but I'll meet up with you again once we get there, just take you through it. Okay, 1 stitch into each. Okay, and I'm just coming up to that first chain 1 space, or my third chain 1 space, I guess you would call it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. So I've gone along the back there. Okay, and now I'm going to pick up that last stitch marker I've got in there, and remember, I'm going to fold it forward this way. And then I'm just going to go right into where that marker is. So I'm just going to remove that. And then I'm going to insert my hook right away so I don't lose the spot. It's actually the space there. And then continue stitching up an extended, extended single crochet. So now those 2 sides are attached. Okay, there we go. Now these sides are attached, and I will continue on placing 1 stitch into each all the way to the end. Okay, so now you've got your second armhole formed. Okay, so now you're just going to finish off round 8, and then I'm going to meet back up with you and talk you through how to work the rest of your body. Okay guys, so I've completed round 8. I'm calling them rounds just because it just feels like we're going around in circles, but they are rows. So I just wanted to show you that now we've done the chain 3. You can see now your official armholes formed. Okay, and now the rest of the body should be super easy. We're just simply going to take one stitch, place it into every stitch all the way around, continuing around, chain one, turn or work, and keep going. So you're going to work back and forth, and that's what's going to create the length of your cardigan. Okay, so I'm going to get you guys started on row 9 just to kind of take you through that very first armhole. Okay, so you will, as usual, chain one here and turn your work, and just continue as always. Insert right away into the very first stitch, place one extended single crochet, and then one into each. And you're going to go all the way until just before that chain 3, and I'll meet up with you there to take you through that opening. Okay, and I just have this last stitch here, and then I've got the chain 3. So we are going to work into that chain 3. Now be careful here that you don't get your work twisted. So whoop, I almost had it there. Okay, so make sure that it's folded out properly. So we're working now with the right side facing out. Right side or wrong side, I mean, it is reversible, but just make sure it's not twisted, okay? And so now we're going to work into each of those 3 chains, okay? So if you want, you can just turn your work slightly this way, or you can work in through the back. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to turn mine this way. So I'm going to make sure that I go into that next stitch, which is right there. And I'll insert and place one. Now I'm going to go, whoops, there it is there, into the second one. And place another one there. Now we'll stretch a little bit. And now this is the third one right here. I'm placing the third one, okay? And so there we go. Now we've bridged the gap, so to speak. And then later when we talk about the sleeves, they will also be worked into the other side of that chain. And that's why, again, it's important not to chain too tightly. And now I'm back across the other side there. So I go into the next stitch and I continue on as usual. And now I'm going to go all the way around to the other side. And once you come across to the other chain 3, and you're going to do the exact same thing. So let me just pull this out here. Okay, so now you've got some actual stitches to work into the next time you come around, and now you can see it's really taking shape. And we give that little chain 3 just to give a little bit of ease and relaxation in the fit. So you can see it's going to come out like that. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward now. You just continue on all the way across. And when you come to, when you come to your next chain 3, you will do the same thing. You'll work in 3 stitches, one into each. Then you continue to the end. And like I said before, you'll chain 1, turn, and then it's just a matter of going back and forth until you get your desired length. Now, again, if you refer to that toddler sizing chart, you want to look at the back to waist measurement. That means the back usually starts from the bottom of the neck and it measures all the way down to the waist. So for me, I'm doing, again, like I said, 5T. I am going to need 10 inches. So I'm now going to work just rows and rows and rows until I get 10 inches in length. Okay. Now, the other thing to do is if you have the child close by, is that as you get to the length that you think might look good, try it on them, okay? Some parents like to have the cardigan sit a little bit lower. Maybe they want it to sit just right at the waist. It's totally up to you or whoever you're making it for. So it's always good if the actual child is there handy, that you try it on before you decide, yep, I'm officially done my length, okay? So I am now leaving you to maybe watch your favorite Netflix show, finish the body, and then I'm going to meet up with you guys when I've done my length, and I'll take you through the next step. Okay, so I have most of the body of my cardigan done, and I'm very happy with that. So I measure just a little over 10 inches, and I did that on purpose because I'm actually making this a little bit larger for the child that I'm making it for. She's actually 4.5, but she's quite tall for her age. So yeah, you can never go wrong measuring a little bit longer than shorter. So in total, I have 28 rows altogether, okay? And just to give you a little idea here, when I measure, yeah, it's just a little over 10 inches, so it's nothing too crazy. But I'm also going to add a little bit of a ribbed trim at the bottom, which we're going to do next. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, before we do the ribbing on the bottom of the trim, we're going to do a few decreases for row 29. And it's going to be really straightforward. We're going to use the single crochet stitch. So we're just going to take a break from doing our extended single crochet. We're just going to do our typical single crochet. So you will have chained 1 and turned. And so what we're going to do is we're going to place 1 single crochet into the very first stitch, and then 1 into the next 3 stitches. Okay, so you'll have 4 stitches in total, just nice and easy. And now into the 5th stitch, what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the 5th and the 6th together. So that is a decrease stitch, also known as 2 together. So you'll insert your hook into the next one, pull up a loop, and then go into the following one and pull up another loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. Then you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. So that now takes 2 stitches and makes 1. Okay, and that's what we're going to repeat all the way to the end of this row. So you will do 4 single crochets. Here's 2, 3, and 4. And then you will crochet 5 and 6 together. So you'll insert and pull up a loop, insert and pull up a loop, just like that. Okay, and you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, so it's just going to give us a little bit more snuggled kind of edging at the bottom. All right, so go ahead and finish that off, and then I'll meet back up with you and we will talk about creating our ribbed trim at the bottom. Okay, and at the end you will have, after your last decrease, you will have 4 stitches left perfectly. Or you might have 3 stitches left. Did I forget to mention that I now have 1 extra stitch? Somehow I managed to have 1 extra stitch somewhere along the way. So not a big deal. If you only have 3 at the end, that's okay too. Okay, so once you've done all your decreases, see, now it's kind of creating this little kind of bunched in effect, which is perfecto. That's exactly what we want. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do to create our trim is, once you've reached the end of your row, you're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, it's going to be a little bit weird because we're going to kind of work sideways. So now what we're going to do is we're into the second chain from the hook. Remember, you don't count this one. 1, 2. You're going to place a single crochet. And then you're going to do that into the next chain and all the way down. So 2, 3, and 4. And this is where it gets a little funny just at the beginning. So you just kind of want to turn your work so that it looks like that. And what we're going to do is, into the very next stitch, so not this one here, into the next one we're going to slip stitch. And so that solidifies our first little section there. I know it looks funny, but it'll make sense in a moment. Then you're going to slip stitch into the very next stitch, and you'll chain 1 and turn your work. So we're going to work back across now of these 4 single crochets, but you want to work into the back loops only. Okay, so you're going to find the very first one. So if you're ever unsure, just start from the left and count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the first stitch I'm going to go into the back loop only. I'm going to single crochet. Then I'm going to go into the back loop of the next stitch and single crochet. And the next one, which is right there, single crochet. And I've got one more, which is that chain one turnaround there. Back loop only, single crochet. And you can see it's creating a little bit of a ridge here, okay? Then you'll chain one, turn your work, and then you'll come back across, okay? So you'll go into that first stitch, back loop only, one single crochet, back loop only, two single crochets. Here's the third. Here is the fourth. Okay, so we're doing 4 stitches the whole time. And now we're going to go into the next. So this is now the bottom of our cardigan here. So we've already worked into that stitch. So be careful you don't go back into that one. So you'll slip stitch into the next stitch, and that solidifies your edging there, just like that. Then you go into the next stitch again, slip stitch one more time, chain one, and turn your work again, and you work back across. So you can see it's already creating a little bit of that ribbing. Okay, so you just work across and back, across and back, across and back, and you're going to do that all the way around until you get to the other side, and that will complete the bottom of your cardigan. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to do this section one more time with you guys just to make sure. Okay, so you want to make sure that you always figure out where is your turning chain there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hopefully you can see that okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are going to go into there. 1, then 2. These are the back loops only. 3. And 4 is right there. Okay, so now you can really see that it's starting to take on that ribbing shape. Chain one, turn your work here, and now you're going to go back across, and this is where we slip stitch, and then work back up. Okay, so if you just kind of look at the bottom, so this is your cardigan, and that is going to be your trim. Don't worry too much about this edging here because we're going to do a little finishing row or round later on. Okay, so you've got a bit of work to do. I'll meet you back up when you're done your trim. Okay, so I have finished my bottom trim now, so it looks something like that. And I just love how that just gives it a really beautiful finished touch there. So that beautiful ribbing. Now you'll notice here that I have not snipped my yarn, and I'm just going to take you through how I'm just going to do a very simple little finishing round all the way around the neck and down before we start talking about our sleeves. And then I've got also a little kind of special thing I'm going to do in the collar. But right now, I'm going to take you through this last row here of our ribbing. So in this very last row, normally you've been slip stitching, but because I want to just do a very simple round of single crochets, we are not going to slip stitch. Okay, and see how there's that little gap there? So you've just done 4 single crochets into the back loop only, and now you're going to continue on into the body of your cardigan and do the same thing. Now, because we're using the extended single crochet, it's going to require some eyeballing. So if we had done double crochets, it would be really easy. We would just, because these are the sides of the stitches, okay? Normally, if it was a double crochet, we would have just worked 2 stitches into the side of each one because the sizing works out perfectly. But with an extended single crochet, it's just slightly a little taller than a single crochet. So there is no kind of definite formula, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right away into this first little section here. So that's where the ribbing ends, and this is where the body begins. So I'm just going to go right in there, and I'm going to single crochet. So this will give me a little kind of continued look, just like that, okay? And so now I'm going to work up the side here, and I just want the stitches to sit nicely next to each other. So this is one of the chains there of that first stitch. I'm going to go in there and single crochet. And now, so I just kind of let it sit as I go. And now I'm going to go into this spot here. Where am I there? Yeah, that looks good. And single crochet. And every time I do that, I just want to make sure, as long as it sits nice and relaxed and straight, then I know I'm in the right spot. If it starts to bunch up, I am too far away. Okay. If it starts to buckle, then I'm too close. So my next one, let's see, I'm going to go right in there. And I always try and actually go into the stitch and not the space. Just like that. And then the next one, I think I'm going to go into that spot there. So, and I keep checking. So if it starts to buckle like that, you know you're spacing them too far away from each other. So this one looks like it was almost a bit far, so I'm going to stay kind of close for the next one and insert there. So it's just single crochets, and now I'm going to go into the side of this stitch right here. Okay, so I like how that's coming out, so I'll just take that out there. So just so you guys can see kind of how nice and finished it looks. Remember kind of how I said it's a little bit kind of on the bumpily side, I call it, although some people like it with a raw edge, and that's okay too. But I just thought this will give the ribbing here just this beautiful finished edging, and that is what you're going to do all the way up your front and then around the collar here. And you're just going to keep it nice and simple, just one stitch into each, okay? A little note about this little corner here. You are going to continue to single crochet into each stitch, and then what I would do is stitch these two sides together. So remember when we did that decrease? So you're going to stitch this stitch and this stitch together. And what that does is it just starts to round out the edges here, and that's what we want. So every time you come to a corner, you're just going to do a little decrease between those two. I'm not going to do it with you because we've already done a decrease when we did the initial row here. So I'll leave a time marker down below if you just need a little refresher there. So you will decrease on each of your little corners there just to round it out. And then you'll continue around the way and continue all the way down until you get to this side here. You'll snip your yarn off and your final trim will be done. And then we shall begin on our sleeve, okay? Oh, and one more little note. When you're coming up around the corner here, okay, so you're going to single crochet and then you get to this corner here. You generally want to place 3 single crochets in that little corner there. And what that does is it helps the stitches round the corner really smoothly. So in that last stitch there, when you place your last stitch, place another 2 in there, and that'll help you kind of come around. So you're going to place 3 in total here, a decrease, a decrease, a decrease, and a decrease in your corners, and then 3, that one's perfect, it's waiting for you, 3 single crochets there, and then you continue all the way down. So really simple. And then I'll meet you back here to start on our sleeves.